Tower Hamlets has long been a place where people from different backgrounds have lived together. However, where there is a mix of people, there is an inevitable lack of understanding of differences between some communities, and with the historic social and economic challenges, it can threaten social cohesion. The borough's populace is a mixture of faith groups, and although the area is made up of an assortment of races, the largest ethnic group is the Bangladeshi population, who account for 1/3 of the residents in Tower Hamlets, making this the largest Bangladeshi population outside of Bangladesh. In 2011, David Cameron delivered a controversial speech on the failings of multiculturalism. The residents of Tower Hamlets have their own views.
Obviously, variety is the spice of life. The more we communicate with other cultures, the more we learn, the more we grow, the better we develop.
I think it is cohesive. I think that people do come together, and I think there is a good community spirit.
Multiculturalism doesn't really exist. I don't think it works. Wherever you go, Tower Hamlets, Newham, wherever you go, it doesn't work. People don't mix.
Multiculturalism is not something that happens overnight. It's something, the integration and the assimilation of communities happening in these boroughs. So he hasn't failed.
I think coming from somewhere that didn't have the same levels of multiculturalism, it was quite different at first, but actually I'm really appreciating it and really enjoying just kind of the cultural hotpot it is, the real mix of people.
The mayor is Bangladeshi and Muslim, so is best placed to serve this part of the community. But how does he address the needs of those from different backgrounds?
I grew up in this borough, and we are a multi-ethnic borough, we're a multi-faith borough. But for me, as a mayor, as a resident, each and every of our 260,000 residents are important to us. Whether we deliver on housing, on education, on provisions for the elderly, provisions for the young, we've got to make sure, and I've got to make sure it reaches, and it benefits each and every member of our community. We do not, discriminate between who reaches and who gets the benefit. As long as the need is there and the want is there, we will support that need, support that want.
This area is steeped in wonderful history. There is a very strong culture, and there is an intercommunal culture. We all have our own separate boxes in a sense, but at the same time, all the boxes are contained within a wider cabinet of which we're all part.
It is part of our gospel that we are hospitable to others. So that means service without deciding who's worthy and who's not worthy, and who's pure and who's not pure, and who's in and who's out. So that service is to any part of the community.
We are practically working with our neighbours, with the fellow citizens, or fellow residents of Tower Hamlets on common issues, and this is the best way to break down barriers. It's not about talking about faith, that my faith is correct and you are wrong. That will divide people. It's when we get down and do things together, this is when our hearts and minds come together.
The borough is home to one of Britain's biggest Muslim communities, and this has been put under the spotlight from the far right, who've accused the mayor of changing the society of Tower Hamlets in accordance with Islamist values. The English Defence League has descended upon the borough numerous times in order to challenge the Muslim community and create intimidation and to provoke confrontation. Their primary target being the East London Mosque, a central place of worship for the Islamic section of the community.
Whenever we get this kind of threat from the far right, that they want to march past our mosque, it takes up a lot of resources from us. So it really diverts us from our main work, which is to serve people, and which is, our mission is to serve, educate, and inspire people. All the communities came together to show our solidarity, that we are one community. There could be many cultures, but we are one society, but many cultures, and we need to accept each other and respect each other.
Somewhere where people from different faiths, different races live together with good social cohesion. Unfortunately, that's a target for other people. Sometimes it's a target for the far right, sometimes it's a target for other people.
When life gets hard, people start to look round for an immediate cause of that. And different faiths or different ethnicities can be a good scapegoat for that.
The far right have unduly and unfairly concentrated on Tower Hamlets. And I've said that there was an attempt by me and my colleagues to Islamicise Tower Hamlets. I refute that. We have stood shoulder to shoulder. Each community, whether it's a Jewish community, Christian community, Muslim community, trade unionists, we have come together to protest against the far right, to send them a clear message that they're not welcome in Tower Hamlets, their hate is not welcome in Tower Hamlets, that we know better our community, and that our community is a fully integrated community which respects each other's cultures and each other's differences.
I take no notice of the EDL. They're just, look, everyone gets scared of them. They're nothing, they're not enough, they're nothing, they can't do nothing. I don't know why people get uptight about them.
Well, I mean, when the far right come to march here, all they're doing is embarrassing themselves, because at the end of the day, it's just a dinosaur. Because, I mean, people are living and they're existing side by side and there's no animosity.
It can cause trouble, because they all think you're tarred to the same brush, and it does cause trouble.
EDL marching in Tower Hamlets is quite, it's inciting more than hatred, because it shows that what they're trying to show is that the majority of the Muslims have this opinion, which is not the case. Majority of the Muslims are very encompassing when it comes to different religion, faiths and ideologies.
I think they really do their best to drag up and inflame tensions within the community. I think it's entirely negative, and I don't really think they've got any place really to march in Tower Hamlets or anywhere else, to be quite honest.
The mosque itself has been on the receiving end of criticism, not only from the far right, but also having been the target of Channel 4's programme Dispatches, which accused it of hosting hate preachers, including those who voiced homophobic views.
There may have been occasions where some speakers came and said some things which are not acceptable in society, but I will not classify them as hate preaching. There's only one incident, okay, which they have taken, which we can say it was wrong. But since then, we have vetted, we have a very robust vetting procedure now, that, any speaker who comes here, they need to sign, they need to go through our policies and procedures, and they have to make sure that they don't say anything out of line. But still, we cannot give full guarantee. Somebody may say something out of place, and it happens all the time. In any venues where people are hosting events, this kind of mistakes can happen.
Coming up in part 2, we will focus on issues that impact families, including the education offered and how the recession has affected Tower Hamlets. Tower Hamlets forms the core of the East End, and it's the third highest population density in England. The borough is run under the auspices of Lutfur Rahman, the first directly elected executive mayor of Tower Hamlets and the first Muslim to hold such a position in Europe.
Before I became the mayor, I had made 5 pledges: education, crime, environment, housing and jobs.
I actually saw a lot of my friends lose their youth to crime. The crime rates are a result of this addiction that we have.
I don't personally take drugs, but other young people might take drugs is because just they haven't got nothing to do.
There's a very strong sense from the community that they don't like people taking drugs, and they're concerned about the effect drug abuse has, particularly on young people, because as we all know, drugs drives antisocial behaviour and crime.
In 2011, David Cameron delivered a controversial speech on the failings of multiculturalism. The residents of Tower Hamlets have their own views.
Obviously, variety is the spice of life. The more we communicate with other cultures, the more we learn, the more we grow, the better we develop.
I think it is cohesive. I think that people do come together, and I think there is a good community spirit.
The English Defence League has descended upon the borough numerous times in order to challenge the Muslim community and create intimidation and to provoke confrontation. Their primary target being the East London Mosque, a central place of worship for the Islamic section of the community.
All the communities came together to show our solidarity, that we are one community. There could be many cultures, but we are one society, but many cultures, and we need to accept each other and respect each other.
The UK, despite being one of the world's biggest economies, has experienced an immense economic downturn with the effects impacting on many. The recession has affected people's living standard and employment opportunities, with those living in poverty being hit the hardest. Research released by the Campaign to End Child Poverty found that 1 in 5 British children was living below the poverty line. At the local authority level, Tower Hamlets had the highest child poverty rate in the country at 42%. However, in the last year of data, it also experienced the biggest fall in child poverty. Living below the breadline hinders social mobility, and with the added effects of the recession, challenges become all the more complex.
We have huge problems here. It is a very poor borough. We have, in parts of the borough, some of the highest child poverty in Britain. We have those problems at a time when the government is preventing local councils from being able to deliver their services. And it's been very difficult locally for the council to have to make choices about where money is spent and where it's not. And the council makes mistakes in that. It is unlikely that a council anywhere in this country doesn't make mistakes. So there needs to be a robust argument between the various sections of the council, for a start, as to how money ought to be spent. That's good democracy.
As a local authority, we cannot directly create jobs, but we have tried to work in partnership with other agencies to deliver and to work with our community to help them into jobs as where as possible. I'll give an example. During the Olympics, we had secured and were able to place 4,000 of our residents into jobs in the Olympic sites. And many of those jobs were temporary jobs, but some of them have continued. In each of the contracts, we want to maximize the job opportunities.
If you want to find work, you will find work, and it's hard.
The block that I live in, the block of flats, is part of it is it does have council tenants in it, and I am aware that some of them are unemployed. So it isn't something that I'm sort of entirely divorced from.
The jobs in Tower Hamlets, as anywhere else, is very, very hard to find.
And through that process, through working in partnership in the construction industry, of the education industry, and other private sectors, we have delivered over 2,500 new jobs for our residents. Also, we have a massive apprenticeship schemes. And those is about working with youngsters, working with the various partners to secure from them apprenticeship schemes. And many of those youngsters, some 1,200 of those youngsters who have been on apprenticeship schemes, been able to secure permanent jobs later on in life. I wouldn't say that we have secured and delivered massive jobs and opportunities, but what we have done is secured sufficient number to keep the community going.
I think even before the recession, a lot of people in Tower Hamlets were struggling to get into employment. And also people are now applying for jobs that are lower than their qualification and finding it harder because they're competing more and more people because of people that have made redundant and been left out of jobs and so forth. So it's gone harder, especially when the recession has arrived now.
It's always been a deprived area to a point where recession only affects people that are high earners and they notice the difference, you understand? But most people in this borough, I mean, I'd say 25 to 30% of the people are on benefits anyway.